Mystery Bros. Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
All right, what's up, guys? This is another episode of Mystery Bros. Sorry, it's been a little bit since we posted. It's cold. It's cold out. But I think we got a pretty cool episode for you today. We're going to be talking about probably the four most famous alien abduction stories. So we're going to be talking about aliens. Shocker.
Yeah, dude, our favorite, our homies.
Yeah. Never talk about aliens on Mystery Bros. But yeah, so in my opinion, we have the two most famous ones and then two other ones that are pretty famous, but I don't know. There's so many is the problem. There's so many. And so many of them are bullshit, let's be honest.
I think
even some of the ones we're going to talk about today, I think are bullshit.
Yeah, and I think drugs have also led to some of these.
I don't think so. I don't think it's drugs. I think it's people wanting to be famous and people wanting attention.
People want cash in. People are crazy.
It's people wanting attention. Yeah. You know, it's something that when you say you've been abducted by aliens and you have this crazy story, everyone wants to talk to you. People want to interview you.
Yeah.
And sometimes even a book deal or a movie deal, that kind of shit comes out of it. So you always have to question motive, but that's why a couple of these ones that we're going to talk about, I think really happened. And a couple of them I don't think happened. But they're all very interesting. They're all pretty cool stories. And we're going to be talking about the Travis Walton story, which I think probably is the most famous one, just because they made a movie about it called Fire in the Sky. Interesting movie. Not great, to be honest with you. Not great. And
movie critic here.
And they didn't really stick to accuracy that well with the movie.
Was it based or did they have loose names?
No, it's based on Travis. Even the guy's name in the movie is Travis. It's supposed to be about him, but and I think the day and everything is accurate, but the alien stuff, what he recounts and what he says is nothing like what the movie says.
Well,
so it's
obviously they have to make it more people need to watch it.
I don't know. It was pretty fucking interesting the way he explained it. I'd watch a movie about that. But anyway, we're going to get into that one, which, again, like I said, I think it's the most famous one. We're also going to get into Betty and Barney Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very interesting. Probably also one of the most famous ones. I think it was technically one of the first.
I think it's the first that
that became public and people, that type of thing. And then we have another one with Linda in New York. She has a compelling story about being abducted. Okay. What's fascinating are the witnesses to this. Okay.
And then I think the most plausible one, in my opinion, is what happened to the missing pilot in the 70s, because one's actually missing and he actually didn't get to cash in, or publicize off his encounter.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about those four. It's super interesting to me, this type of stuff, just because I'm sure, as everyone knows, all our listeners know, I totally believe in aliens. I definitely believe that they're out there, and I believe that they've visited Earth. I believe that they've checked us out. They've, that kind of thing. It's just crazy to think that maybe they're actually taking people and doing experiments and trying to, you know what I mean?
I've been thinking about it.
It's what would we do if we found a new species in the jungle or something? We would probably try and
we were on another planet
on it or something, right?
Or we were observing on another planet. If we were the ones observing on a different planet, we'd probably
want to check it out.
Figure out what these people do.
Yeah, so it's super interesting, and it's also just kind of creepy too. It's scary.
It's creepy. I don't have
abductions.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen The Fourth Kind? Pharrell?
Was that the 1970s Spielberg movie?
No.
No, then no.
No. Ooh, that one's a
Encounters
really,
of the
that's a
Wasn't that
scary.
this?
No, that's Close Encounters of
Oh.
the Third Kind. I'm talking. There's a movie called The Fourth Kind. It came out in like 2012 or whatever. So it was kind of recent, but not like super recent. And it was like about alien abductions, and it scared the shit out of me because they marketed it like it was real, like it was like this, like there was real footage.
It's like one of those
it looked
cam.
like
It's
it
like
was
one of
real
those.
footage.
It's like one of those cam movie things.
No, it wasn't a full like found footage movie, but there was a lot of like that type of like recording stuff in it, and they made it seem they marketed it like it was real, made it seem like it was real, and I was only like 18 or something when it came out, or somewhere around there, and I thought it was real. It scared the shit out of me. But that's a good one to check out if you're interested in like scary alien movies.
Yeah, so let's
Yeah. Yeah, so let's get into it then. We're gonna start off with
Linda.
Linda.
We're gonna take
Does
you.
this Linda have a last name?
Yes, so her name is Linda Napolitano.
Okay.
And she has a crazy story. What happened to her back in the 1980s in New York. And Linda, and she lived like a pretty normal life. Her husband worked. She had 2 children.
Is this New York City she lives?
Yes, she lived in New York City in the apartment. So she said what happened on November 30th, 1989 at around 3 a.m. She said all of a sudden she had this very quiet feeling that something was watching her. So she like woke up, got up, and then she saw these short beings around her bed. And she was startled, but like they were like telling her in like she says in telepathic, soothing way to like be quiet and like not say anything.
Ooh.
So it's pretty juicy.
They were communicating like telepathically, she said.
She says she just like got a feeling. She's just like she knew that they were telling her to like stay quiet.
Was her husband like away on a business trip or something?
No, he
was there?
sleeping.
He has no account of any of this?
He was sleeping.
Okay.
And they only said to be quiet. So
okay.
She didn't obviously wake up. He didn't obviously wake up, I guess. I guess they're not interested in him.
All right.
So anyways, all of a sudden these beings move to the light, and all of a sudden she feels she's getting moved to the light. So she's slowly like leaving her feet.
Okay.
And she's floating out her bedroom window up into the New York City skyline.
Wow.
With these 2 alien beings right next to her. And she just remembers paralyzed. She couldn't really move or anything. She just knows that she was just
floating up.
She was just floating up to the shift.
Okay.
She was seeing the buildings all around her in New York, and she was just floating up.
Uh-huh. Does she remember anything like being on the ship at all?
Yeah, I'll get into that.
Sorry.
I'll get into that. Make my story. And then so the next thing she remembers, she goes onto the ship. So she pours. This is a huge ship. She sees a green light. She goes inside, and they escort her down a hallway and into a room. And they just sit there, and they're on the other side. They don't say anything, and they just see this table. She sees this table with like stuff on it, and like she just had a feeling saying like she knew that like if she was gonna get put on that table, bad things were gonna happen.
She got scared.
She got really scared.
Yeah.
She tried to move, but they wouldn't. They like calmed her down. She said that she got like a soothing feeling, so she calmed down, and they just took her and like placed her on the table. She was struggling. One put her the hand over her mouth, so she would struggle. And then she remembers them putting something up on her her nose, and then she woke up right next to her, lying next to her husband.
That's all. That's the last thing she remembers. Them putting something in her nose. Okay.
And then waking up next to her husband at 5 a.m., not knowing how, like what happened. Like, whoa,
Wow.
I'm back.
What time did all this start?
3 a.m.
3 a.m. So it was a 2-hour time period.
Yeah, there was 2 hours time period, and she said it wasn't that long.
Yeah, that's not very long. If you ask me at this point, I would say she's batshit crazy, but there is a little bit of evidence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the doctor found something up her nose that like they took X-rays and they saw there was something pierced up on her nose.
And I've seen the X-rays. It looked like it looked like there was something with like little like prongs coming out of it, kind of like inserted in her nose.
It's important to note though that the doctor was her niece.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Like, isn't the doctor somewhat related to her? Which is yes.
Yeah. So she could like help the story. And when they were going to remove it, she got abducted a second time, and they removed it for her. So we never actually got to see the.
There was a second abduction.
We never.
Supposedly,
she never talks
to her.
Yeah, she never talks about it or anything. When they were gonna like remove the thing, she says, "Oh, she got abducted a second time," and and it got removed. Interesting though that they
isn't that coincidence? Isn't that just Huh.
Interesting though, where it was, they did find like a lot of cartilage built up. So
yeah, I remember them saying that.
So it definitely seemed like something was there.
Yeah. Was this her niece again, though, making that diagnosis that there was cartilage?
No, she went to a throat specialist. She went to their throat. No,
like a sinus specialist type. Okay. Isn't there also like some witnesses?
So that's what I'm coming into. So this is what makes this is very interesting because there's 21 witnesses to this, and they're not related to her.
Because she was in like New York City, right?
Yes.
Like in the city when this is happening, in an apartment building in the city.
Yes.
So you would assume that there would have to be some other people that would see something here, and if there wasn't, I would just call bullshit immediately. But
yeah, there's 21 witnesses who said who saw something that night. And what I have to go what's kind of interesting about that is that like, if I saw a woman like floating up with two beings, I wouldn't report it because like
you said
I wouldn't report it.
Oh.
Because you know why? Because they're gonna like literally. If I call the cops, like I see this lady like floating to the alien ship, they're gonna ask me like, when's the last time I got a CAT scan? Like,
but why not? Why not just report it?
So you would report it. You saw like these alien beings take this lady up.
This was in 1989, right?
Yes.
See, it's like the first thing I would do is take a picture.
But you don't have a cell phone. You
don't have that. So yeah, I probably would call the police.
I wouldn't.
Or somebody. I call you. Be like, bro. Someone's floating out their window outside.
Yeah, but that's on an eyewitness account.
Yeah, I know. I would call the police.
So like the people did. So there's some interesting accounts. There's one lady said that she was going over the Brooklyn Bridge and all of a sudden her car stopped and all the cars stopped around her. Ooh. And they saw this light. And they saw this lady followed by two beings being taken up to the ship. One of the public accounts. Okay. And this girl had no relation with, to their knowledge, like no family relationship or anything with Linda.
Okay. Did all these witnesses all called that same night or later? So
they all like, once she kind of came out, they all came out to the ufologist.
Okay.
And they said, yeah, they saw stuff. What's interesting though is what I'm about to get into is the two security guards.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that they said they saw the wife. I mean, not the lady and the two alien beings moving her up the ship. And they were escorting someone kind of very important. He was in the UN. His name is Javier Perez de Salar.
We don't know that for sure, though, right?
So let me get into it. So he's a former secretary of the General of the UN. So Bud Hopkins claims he's spoken with him. He got his eye testimony. He said yes, but he told him that you can't go public with this because if people know that like if people know that I say this stuff, like I'm done. My career is finished.
Your political career is probably in the greatest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably not great.
You're not going to get reelected ever again or anything. So he signed the letter with him, but he like told. So according to Bud Hopkins, he told Bud Hopkins like, I will not publicly testify to this story because it would just ruin my career.
And so it was 2 like security guards for him, and then supposedly him too.
Yeah,
that all saw this.
Yeah, they were in a traffic jam.
The security guards have come out and said it, right?
So the security guards wrote in a letter to Bud Hopkins. Thing is, they never met.
Bud Hopkins is a ufologist, right?
Yes. So he's the one who's like investigating all this.
Okay.
Investigating Linda's claims because like I'm sure the police department's not going to investigate.
They don't have their Men in Black division on it.
They don't have it on. Yeah. So he's investigating this. So yeah, everything's going through him. So the communication's going through him, and that's why some people say he might have been caught up in a hoax because he actually never met the 2 security guards. They were all just wrote letters to each other, phone calls, that kind of thing. So and he told them not to visit Linda to like not taint their descriptions, but they did.
I remember that. Like they ended up speaking with Linda, right?
Yeah, they actually kidnapped Linda, put her in a car, and like demanded to know, like what happened that night, what was happening.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
They like went to her house and like grabbed her and were like,
like
tell us what the fuck happened.
Like tell us what happened. Tell us what happened. Like
wow, if that's true, that's pretty crazy.
Here's where it gets.
It's just hard to believe all this stuff because it's all coming from like either Linda or like a ufologist. You know what I mean?
Right. But the 21.
And what is going on with her husband? Her husband has no like. He doesn't say anything. Nothing happened to him. Nothing. They're in the same bed.
Nothing. I just slept through the whole thing.
Okay. That's a little fishy to me.
Well, there's a lot of fishy stuff to this story.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. So there's the interesting part of the story. There's 21 public witnesses that have come out, and like some of the names have no relations with Linda at all. So like interesting.
Okay.
Here's what else it gets. They later do a hypnosis.
Like hypnotic regression.
Yeah. And on the security guards.
It's a common theme.
And on Linda, right?
Okay.
On one of the security guards, he basically claimed that him and Linda have been kidnapped since they've been 9, alien abducted since 9, and they started a love affair on an alien spaceship. This is all later.
One of the security guards says that during the regression.
Yeah, so like take that with like a fucking grain of salt.
Yeah, this one's a little. I don't know. I don't know about this.
So I don't think the hypnosis thing is correct at all. I don't even. If you want my personal opinion, I don't believe the story. I don't.
Me either.
I don't think it happened. I think there's just too many inconsistencies.
Yeah, there's just no like any sort of like proof or I mean, there's never proof, but like there's no like evidence or like I don't know. There's just nothing.
She also wrote a book.
It was in the middle of New York City too. Yeah. Like how did not thousands of people not?
I kind of get that though. Like I kind of get like what are you going to call the cops for saying you saw like but
yeah, I think most people would.
Right. I don't believe it because the story just doesn't make enough sense to me to believe, especially like afterwards they're now going through hypnosis and they're saying like, oh, they've known each other longer, you know.
Here's the kicker for me, how like she has the thing in her nose that supposedly like you see the x-ray from her like that just happened to be at her niece's place and then right before it's like, oh, we're going to take this out. It's like, oh, I just got abducted again and it's gone. Darn. Gee. Oh, well, I guess we'll never know. Like, that's just a little fishy. That's just like a little fishy.
She's never really described the second time. Like,
yeah. Like, well, I think Linda and these security guards are kooky.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe they saw a UFO that night or something, and then like decided they're gonna talk about how they were like abducted, or she was,
Right. Her final quote was, if this was a hallucination, then 21 other people saw my hallucination.
I guess. Did all 21 other people say that like they saw her being taken off into the ship and everything?
Yeah, all of the other 21 are witnesses that night who saw her and like came up to Bud Huckins like, yeah, I saw her that night. That's the only interesting. That's the
Do
only
we know
thing.
any of their names?
They're probably.
So you could just be making all this up. Bud Hopkins.
No, like they're public. Like you can go you can go look their name. I don't have it written down.
Okay, but
they're just random people.
But you can look up their names.
Yes, they're public statements.
Okay.
They said they're like, but like you could say they could have just come out for attention, like because like yeah, I could probably I was in New York City then.
Yeah.
We don't know. That's the only interesting part. That's the only kind of thing that kind of holds ground to the story.
Yeah. I don't know about this one. Not sure if I believe this one. But it is a famous one, right?
Yeah.
What's her name? Linda
Napoleano.
Very Italian.
She died, so rest in peace.
Oh, she's dead now.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
She wrote a book, if anybody...
Of course she did. See, there it is. Although I don't think writing a book necessarily means you're lying. It's just...
You can cash in.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right? Like I can't. Just the fact that you wrote a book doesn't make me think that you're lying. But it. When there's all that fishy bullshit, and then you still and you write a book on top of it, like. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. I think next we're going to go with Travis Walton's story. Like I said, I think that this one is probably the most famous abduction story, just because it got huge. It blew up. They made a movie about it. And there's also a book written, of course, by Travis.
Apparently, I heard they're make a remake of the movie.
Yeah, that's what he said in his Joe Rogan interview, that they're supposedly could be doing a remake, which would be cool. I hope they make it more accurate. At least like his depiction of being in the...
How much he's getting paid for it?
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to get some money for it. Yeah, but like I said, that doesn't,
Why don't they make a movie with Bob Lazar? I want his story. That'd be crazy. They haven't made that.
Yeah, like a feature, I think Bob Lazar, I don't know if he wants that. He's a very private dude. I don't think he likes that. Which is what adds to...
So just wait till he dies.
For me. But, so Travis Walton, he was like a lumberjack or a logger. He worked as part of a crew in Arizona. And his story, like I said, has been made into a movie, Fire in the Sky. There's also a book. I think the book is also called Fire in the Sky. So it's like I said, one of the most well-known abduction stories, but there's also a lot of skeptics to it. Many believe it's a hoax, but let's get into that one. So it takes place on November 5th, 1975 in a town called Snowflake, Arizona. Interesting. I wonder if it's ever snowed there.
He actually said on the podcast that like when they were going to make a movie, they wanted to do an interview on where it happened. And he said, well, if you want to do that, it's like full snow.
Yeah, you're right. So I guess it does snow in Arizona. Maybe it's like up in the mountains or something.
Probably like some mountainous region. Definitely not.
Are there mountains in Arizona? Maybe. I don't know.
Well, Snowflake, Arizona. There must be.
Yeah. Anyway, it's called Snowflake, Arizona. And he was working with a timber stand improvement crew in what's called the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. And basically what they did is they would like cut down certain trees that were like unhealthy or whatever. They would like remove them, cut them down, and then it would make room for healthier trees to like grow. And I guess it's supposed to be good for the forest.
They're good.
At the same time, they're probably making some money off the lumber and shit. But
so they're good guy lumberers,
I guess. Yeah, and they're working on a contract. And it was Travis and 6 other coworkers that he was working with. He describes their relationship more as just kind of like coworkers, not necessarily friends. He actually says like they didn't all like each other. Like he had like an altercation with one of the crew members earlier that week. And apparently that day also at work. I guess one of the crew members, his name was Alan Dulles. Him and Travis didn't really get along that well. I guess from what Travis says is that Alan Dulles was like trying to like get with Travis's girlfriend, or like trying to break up Travis and his girlfriend so he could get with them, and Travis didn't like that, and they had fought on a couple occasions.
I wouldn't like that either. I'd be like, F you.
Yeah, I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? But yeah, apparently they had somewhat of an altercation that day. At work. So they finish up their day, and they all get in the truck to head home. And as they're driving home, they see a like gold reddish glow that was in the sky, like in a clearing, like off in the distance. They couldn't see what was causing it at the time, like through the forest, but they could see that there was like just a really, really dark goldish reddish glow coming up. So and it's kind of in front of them in their path. So they had to keep going. As they get closer, they basically see that it's like a large, like disc shaped object, like pretty standard, like UFO description, like saucer, shaped. He said it was kind of small. Like it was about 40 feet long or less, like not that big, which is interesting. So Travis apparently like hops out of the vehicle just because, I guess he just was interested, or, trying to be tough or something. He hops out of the vehicle and starts going towards the UFO, like walking towards it. And it's kind of like hovering over a clearing right now. And all of the crew is yelling at him like, what are you doing, dude? Like, get the fuck back here. Like, stop. What are you doing? And, he basically just continued walking up to it until he was like almost underneath it. He says it was at like a 45-degree angle, like underneath it. And right about then, he says like a beam came from the craft onto him, and it like hit him, and he said it felt like it was like a numbing like shock force that had hit him, and he like flew back. The crew said he was thrown about 15 to 20 feet by this shock. Wow. All right. Crazy. He says it was like lights out at that point.
Doesn't remember what happened next.
He doesn't remember what happened immediately next. He just remembers looking at it, feeling like this numbing, like shock, wave go through him, and then we'll get to what he woke up to. But at that point, he was unconscious. The crew saw him get like thrown 15 to 20 feet. So at this point, they all got really scared. They kind of assumed like he's probably dead, and they just left. So they just took off, drove down the road. After about 3 to 5 miles, they pulled over, and the crew leader, Mike, basically was like, guys, we got to go back. We got to go back and check. We got to go make sure like he's okay. We got to go back and check. A lot of the people didn't want to. They were like, no, fuck that. We're getting the fuck out of here.
No, you got to go check on your guy, dude.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they're not really friends. Like most of them aren't really friends, I think. Like that's what he was trying to explain. But you're right. They ended up deciding that they were going to go back. So they went back to look for Travis, and he was gone. Was not there. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, that would be
crazy.
Ooh, that would scare me, man.
Right? If I was part of the crew, like, holy shit. We'll get to that in a little bit, but like, what do you tell like the police? Like, what do you know what I mean? Are they gonna fucking believe you, or this dude's gone? But anyway.
I would you'd have to say it this way, like, there's a craft that like I saw it like hit my friend. And that's what you have to.
well, yeah, but so get back to Travis. So, Travis remembers regaining consciousness. He said he felt like a really intense, like, internal pain. Like he felt like something was wrong with him. I mean, he just got that, like, shocked and thrown 20 feet or whatever, but he felt really, like, intense internal pain, and he was laid out on a table with, like, a light above him. He could hear movement, but he was too, like, distracted by the pain to, like, look around and see what was going on. He kind of just assumed that he was, like, in a hospital. You know, he just assumed there was, like, doctors, like, looking at him. He felt so bad that he said he thought he was going to die. He felt that bad. Mm-hmm. So he just assumed he was in a hospital. But once he was able to, like, focus his eyes and look around, he saw that he was surrounded by beings that were not human. All right. He screamed. He jumped up and he grabbed an object. He said it was some sort of, like, beaker, like some sort of, like, you know, glass thing. And he started swinging it at them. And at that point, he says that they got scared and ran out of the room and just kind of, like, left him in there by himself. He described them as, like, humanoid looking, small and hairless, big eyes, grayish white skin, and about 3 to 4 feet tall. You know, so that's a pretty typical alien description. But in 1975, you know, there wasn't a ton of alien descriptions, but that's pretty typical. Small, 3 to 4 feet, big head, humanoid looking, big eyes, that kind of shit. He said that they were wearing, like, orange coveralls, like, basically like jumpsuits, like orange, like, jumpsuits. And he was trying to find, like, a way off of the ship. Like, he was kind of frantically, like, running around. And then he says that 2 men came into the room. This is where it gets interesting. He describes them as, like, they were humans. They were human. They had, like, blonde hair. Apparently they were, like, very, like, good looking humans, I guess. And they were dressed in blue coveralls. And that kind of made him feel a little bit better, because it's like, okay, there's a human here. So he decided to.
He'd have to, like, I don't get what his first threat was. Like, when you like see these aliens on the ship, like, you're on a ship, like, where are you gonna run?
Yeah, but apparently they wouldn't communicate with him. Like, I guess he was, like, trying to talk to them and they wouldn't speak to him. So
maybe they can't.
That would be interesting, or that would kind of be a little scary.
Yeah.
So he followed them into another room where there were 3 more humans, or human-like looking things there. And they tried to get him to lay down on a table. He said it was 2 men and 1 woman. And again, they were all just kind of like the epitome of, like, what a human, you know, a good-looking human would be. Again, they weren't talking, but they were just trying to get him to lay down on this table. And at that point, he didn't want to, but, like, he kind of started to realize, like, I don't think I have a choice here. I think that, you know, and I don't think he was scared that they wanted to kill him or anything. I feel like they could have just done that, or they would have just done that if they wanted to. So he decides to just lay down on the table, and they put, like, this mask over his face, and he said it was some sort of anesthetic, because he just went unconscious again after that. And when he woke up, he was laying on the ground, pretty close to where he was when he got shocked by the UFO, and he saw the UFO hovering above him. He said it was about 80 to 100 feet hovering above him.
It's convenient that he was able to see it when he woke up.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a huge glowing object.
Not that he just woke up and it's, like, gone already. Made more sense.
Maybe. But he saw it take off, and he got up. He knew where it was because it was like pretty close to where he'd been taken from. So he ran to like the nearest town, and he made a phone call from a payphone, and I think he called like his brother-in-law. And I guess at first his brother-in-law thought it was a joke, like haha, yeah, right. He didn't think it was him. And then he's like, no, dude, it's really me. I'm here. Can you come pick me up? And they did that. And it wasn't until his brother and his friends and stuff arrived to him and they told him that he'd been gone for 5 days. He didn't realize that.
Wow.
So that's pretty interesting. But that's Travis's side. Now back to the crew that he was with. Once they realized Travis was gone, when they went back and looked for him, they didn't know what to do other than to tell the police what had happened. And the police immediately thought that this was a cover-up for a murder, that they somehow killed Travis either on the job or on purpose through an altercation or something, and they were trying to cover it up. So the police were kind of like questioning them and investigating them under the pretense that they'd murdered someone. I don't think the police believed anything they said right off the bat.
I wouldn't.
I
wouldn't. It would be hard.
Exactly. But I mean, they were all taken into the and questioned all separately in separate rooms, and they all stuck to the story. But like I said, they believed that they murdered Travis, and they were questioned pretty aggressively, according to the police, and they all stuck to the story. Eventually, I think like 3 or 4 days later, the police were like, we want you to take a polygraph test, because if you take this polygraph test, that'll help us figure out, whether you guys are bullshitting or if this is really what you guys think happened or what you guys saw. Mm-hmm. So they were administered a polygraph test. 5 out of the 6 men passed the polygraph test. The 6th one was the Alan Dulles guy. And apparently, like, he got a little upset during the test because they were questioning him pretty aggressively, because he was like the only one who like
didn't like him,
and had altercations with him in the past, type of thing. So he got too upset during the test, and it came back as inconclusive. But 5 out of the 6 passed the test.
Yeah, so they thought what they saw. They believe what they saw.
Exactly. Yeah. After Travis returned, he underwent a lot of medical tests. No traces of drugs or alcohol or anything was in his system. They did like X-rays, EKGs, all that stuff was gone through. Obviously he was met with a lot of skepticism,
right,
about his story. And he was given a polygraph test as well after he came back about all that, which he did pass. So pretty interesting.
I heard if you clench your
yeah, I'm sure there are ways to pass a polygraph test, but it's usually pretty good. It's usually a pretty good way to tell.
Clench your butt cheeks. That's a good way to pass.
But I think that'll just come back as inconclusive if you do that.
I don't know. I've never done one, so I can't say. I know from experience.
Yeah, I've never done one either. And I mean, there are a lot of people that say that this is a hoax, and I mean, I'm open to that too. I mean, there's a lot about this story that is a little fishy.
They could have wanted just a cash grab and just like made a
hoax.
He
made a ton of money off of this, making a movie and like writing a book, and they all got famous for a little bit. And I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff. Like if you go on Wikipedia, which Wikipedia is always like super leaning towards the skeptic side of everything, though. Wikipedia like hates everything cool. They just think they just want to explain away everything. But if you go to Wikipedia, there's a lot of like skeptic information. Like apparently, I don't know. They on Wikipedia they say that they got like $5,000 for some sort of like they got given $5,000 by like a UFO like magazine or something for that story or something like that. But I don't know. I haven't heard that anywhere else. I haven't read that anywhere else.
So they could
Just because it's Wikipedia doesn't mean it's true. But I did see that. But as far as some other things on the believer side, they actually did a test of, I think it was Arizona State did it or something. They did a test on all the trees in the location that in the area where they say that the craft was and where they picked up Travis.
Yeah.
They did a like test on all the trees within like 100-foot radius of where the craft was, and they found that the trees. They found that those trees where it was hovering have much thicker growth rings than they should have, like way thicker growth rings, and the thickness was in the direction of the tree that faced where the craft was. So it was like on that side. So like if you go around the circle, like the part facing in on the trees had the thicker growth rings, which is actually, that's known to be a like symptom for like trees and stuff that have been exposed to radiation. Like if you go to Chernobyl, a lot of the trees, almost all the trees like within the like blast radius or whatever of Chernobyl have way thicker growth rings than they should. Because I guess that's just something that happens when trees are exposed to radiation. So they did do a test on that, and that's official. So that's interesting. You know, pretty weird story though, how there was like humans on the ship. Like, what do you think that means? Like
they were genetically made. They just got like the best genes from like the both.
Or maybe that leads to like the Earth being like seeded. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or
humans weren't born on Earth through evolution. They were brought here.
You can go through all kinds of different theories.
Isn't that crazy?
Who knows?
Aliens came and dropped off humans on Earth, and then we
settle down here.
I mean, that's, you know,
lightning split two atoms, and that's how life started.
It's interesting to think about. His story is pretty weird.
Right. I know it's a very interesting story. I remember listening to his podcast and just thinking like a little like, oh, he sometimes like does some long pauses to think about stuff, and I'm like trying to like fill in some gaps here.
Yeah. He still to this day he does like interviews and stuff. He did a big interview like right afterwards that you can see on YouTube. He's done he's probably done like 3 or 4 big interviews since then. And then he just recently, like a month ago, just did a Joe Rogan podcast. So if you want to hear more about it, go check those out.
What's interesting though, like his story is like pretty simple. Like he was in this room, these people walked in, calmed him down, he got on the table, and then he woke back up. If I was making a story up, I would be like, I went through all these rooms, I like got out, saw the spaceship, saw these rooms, saw what was inside this room, room. I maybe elaborate a little more than keep it that short.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about this one. It's very sensationalized, so it makes me want to not believe it. But I don't know. There's nothing that sticks out that makes me think like he had to be like, this is all bullshit, like the Linda story. I don't know why. But I don't know what I think. I don't know about this one. Maybe I believe it, maybe I don't. It's
very intriguing that I think it's compelling that all the Lumbers stuck to their story and passed lagged. Because like if it was a prank, you're getting investigated for murder. Like now's the time to like come clean then. Like
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But if you knew he was going to reappear in like 5 days, I guess you could just...
Yeah. I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, we'll never know unless we like meet the aliens who like abducted him.
Yeah, unless he comes out and admits that it was fake at some point.
But then you still have people saying, like, oh, no, it was the government who made him come out and say.
Okay, so if you go to the Travis Walton UFO incident Wikipedia page, they just hate so hard. They're like, the case received mainstream publicity and remains one of the best known alien abduction stories. Skeptics consider it a hoax. There was an NBC television movie called The UFO Incident that was about Betty and Barney Hill that aired 2 weeks before he made all this happened.
But I mean, that's kind of like a far-reaching.
That could just easily be a coincidence, but apparently 30 years after, all right, there's a game show that's called The Moment of Truth, which is an awesome game show, by the way. I love this. I've gone on YouTube and like rewatched like almost the entire first season. It's a crazy game show. But it's called The Moment of Truth, where they put you on like a lie detector test and they ask you a bunch of questions. And then you have to like answer the questions truthfully in front of like all your family and your friends and an audience.
Do they ever like ask, like, have
money.
You cheated on your wife?
Oh, yeah.
Husband?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a crazy TV show, dude. It's crazy. It's actually pretty entertaining. But they asked him if he was in fact abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975, to which he replied yes, and the polygraph test determined he was lying. Doesn't necessarily mean that, it is what it is, but he passed the polygraph test earlier.
He passed the one that, like,
He passed the one that was given by the police, He
passed the one that needed to, not the one that she's doing it for money.
Yeah, for a TV show.
They probably don't have the same. Maybe they do. Who knows?
But yeah, it is what it is. So that's the Travis Walton story. If you're interested, there's plenty of stuff you can go to check it out. I would check out his JRE, his Joe Rogan interview. That one was pretty good. But what do we got next? We're going to save Betty Barney Hill till the end for the last one, because that one I think is the most compelling.
So now we're getting to a very bizarre case. This takes place in Australia. Another pilot UFO incident.
Okay.
For me, this one is the most believable, only because the guy never came back. So we're going to go back to 1978. He was supposed to fly. Yeah, so it was October 1st, October 21st, 1978. He was set to fly from Victoria to King Island, which King Island is the small little island below Australia. And he was going to fly over the Bass Strait.
Okay. How many miles is that?
So it's not really long. So it's like they said it should be an hour flight.
Oh, okay.
So it's not very
short.
This was a training flight. He wanted to get some extra hours in.
Okay.
He was doing this flight in a Cessna 182. And I should note that the Cessnas are meant to, if there is a water landing, unless you like do a hard head-on collision with the water, the plane should float.
Yeah.
If you crash land it. So anyways, he's flying the Cessna. It's around 7 a.m. Okay. It's like a partly cloudy day. Good start to the morning. Like nothing crazy happened that morning weather-wise. He radios the tower at 7 a.m. asking the tower at his location if there's any aircraft in the area flying, which the tower says no. He says that there's a craft flying over him. He says like on the radio transmission, he says, "quote it seems to be playing a game, but it's an aircraft, and it's not an aircraft." Okay. And he says,
so like it's not an airplane, is what he's saying.
Yeah, it's just like it seems like it's a stationary. What I'm doing right now is it's orbiting on top of me. It's also got a green light and it's sort of metallic, shiny on the outside. Oh, it just vanished.
Okay, that was his transmission.
Yeah. So everything goes fine for like 30 minutes later. And then he says, it's back, Melbourne. It's back. And he's like, that strange craft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering, and it's not an aircraft. And then all of a sudden, there's 17 seconds of silence. And then you hear a clunk, like a scratching noise.
Yeah.
Then nothing. Him and the plane have never been found again. 4 days, they spent 4 days searching the Bass Straits, no evidence of the plane. They're saying that it couldn't have been a straight on crash landing because they would have found the Cessna. He must have like died.
Yeah, either he dove like straight into the ocean or it's just gone. It's not
It's
there.
gone, yeah.
Wow. Now you can listen to like the transmissions, right?
Yes, that's his exact word for word. Like,
yeah. And I remember listening to it, and the metal screeching sound is kind of crazy. Like it's a very like strange sound.
Right.
Yeah.
And he is kind of hard to explain away. Like, you're not doing this for money or publicity.
Yeah,
because you're not. You're not going to be around for it.
Yeah.
Skeptics. So 4 days, they found nothing. On the report, officially, they said the incident is unknown. What happened? We like inconclusive. We have no idea.
Yeah.
So skeptics will say, well, he's a UFO. Like he was fascinated with UFOs.
Yeah. He liked to do, he knew, he was very interested in UFOs, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, Evan, if anything ever happened to us UFO related, they'll be like, oh, well, they do a podcast. Like,
yeah. We wouldn't be taken seriously. We'd be like, oh, they're just UFO kooks.
Yeah, like they do a podcast.
Ever said anything, yeah.
So, and then he basically discredits him, saying that like, oh, he was disoriented. The lights he saw were actually reflecting from the water, and he crash landed that way.
Then where's the plane?
The ocean's big. So that's how they discredit him. And then the other people are saying that like he maybe wasn't in a good state. He wanted to commit suicide and like wanted to make a good story while like committing suicide.
Did he have like a wife and kids or anything?
No, he's 20 years old.
He was only 20.
Yeah.
Did any of his friends or anyone say he wanted to get like, yeah, what? You can't just assume that a dude's going to do that.
That's what they're saying. And then there's been some witnesses, like a farmer said they saw the ship and saw his plane stuck on the back of it while it was flying away that day. So you can take that.
That's crazy. Wasn't there like some pictures taken that same day?
Yeah, there were some sightings of some strange craft that day around the area too, which is interesting. But like, again, I can't really
there was like some pictures taken like off the southern coast of Australia of like a UFO that kind of fits that description, right? Yeah.
Definitely interesting, definitely creepy case. Like, yo, there's this object and you just never hear from the sky again.
Yeah. When was this?
1978.
1978. Okay. It was in Australia. Yeah, I mean that one's interesting. I wish there's not really a ton of info on that one, is there? But he's gone, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like they never found anything.
No evidence, never found anything.
No trace at all.
No trace of him.
What's the report say?
Inconclusive. They don't know what happened.
Wow.
They base it off pilot error and that he crashed. That's kind of what you have to assume. He got
someone trying to say like a meteor might have hit him or something like that.
Yeah, but that's like, well, why would he radio tower? Like,
why would he say there's something hovering over him and all that stuff? And yeah, he wouldn't just know.
He literally, if it was a meteor, he would just be flying 1 second later, just not be flying.
And there would probably still be some sort of evidence or some like debris or something if there was.
Like I said, the Cessnas are made to float unless you crash on head on with the water.
Yeah.
Should be. That's definitely an eerie case. I feel like the most believable so far.
I guess. Yeah. Definitely more believable than Linda. And I mean, I'd say it's easier to say it's more believable because he didn't have a whole story about like seeing aliens and all that shit. You know what I mean? So it's easier, but
He's not back. He's not alive to
Exactly,
tell
yeah,
it. He's
he's
not
not
alive
here.
to tell it.
So it's more mysterious.
Yeah.
Which I think makes it seem a little more believable because the other ones go into crazy elaborate stories, you know. But we're gonna get into Betty and Barney Hill for the finale here. In my opinion, this one is the most believable one. All right, so Betty and Barney Hill. This one is definitely...
It's the first case.
It's basically the first alien abduction case that ever went like public or you know, anything like that. In my opinion, this one is the most believable. I almost say I hesitate to say it, but I think I believe this. I really do. So little background on them because that's kind of important. Betty and Barney Hill are a couple. Now they're an interracial couple. This was back in like the 60s.
Yeah.
All right. So they were an interracial. Barney was black. Betty was white. Betty was a social worker. All right. Barney was a postman. All right. So they're both pretty normal people. Now both were members of the NAACP. Barney was like a prominent like civil rights activist as well. They lived up in New Hampshire, so it's not like they were in Alabama or you know where they were really fighting. But Barney was a prominent civil rights activist. He received many awards for his activism, including an award from the governor of New Hampshire. All right,
Seems like a good guy.
He was also invited to President Lyndon B. Johnson's inauguration for his work in the civil rights movement. All
Nice.
right. Pretty upstanding guy, you know. They're both college graduates. They're both upstanding and very respected citizens in their community, basically. All right. So having said that, this starts September 19th, 1961. It was around 10:30 at night, and they were driving home from a trip to Canada. They went to like Niagara Falls and I think Quebec, and then they were heading back home. Now they're up in New Hampshire, so they just border Canada, so it probably wasn't that crazy to go up to Canada and back. Apparently they've done that a bunch of times. They knew that route. They knew the trip. As they're driving, they notice a strange light in the sky that seemed to be following them. All right. They start to get a little nervous because they start to realize that it was following them and it was getting closer, and they had no idea what it could be. Once it started to get a little closer and follow them, Betty started saying like, "This is a UFO." All right. Barney didn't believe her and was like, "You're being silly." So they pull off the road. They go off into like a kind of like a side road.
Why they pull off the road?
They wanted to try and like lose it, basically. Like they were like, okay, we're on this big highway right now. It's just kind of following us. So maybe if we pull off into a side road or something, it'll leave us alone, or it'll go away. And I think they wanted to kind of get a look at it as well. Because Betty thought it was a UFO because apparently like 3 years earlier, Betty's sister said that she saw a UFO at one point, and Betty was like, "Oh wow, that's interesting." Like her sister said that she saw a UFO, so like she started to believe in UFOs, and then all of a sudden she's like, "There's a fucking light chasing us. It's a UFO." And Barney was like, "Stop, calm down, you're being silly." And they pull off, and it basically continues to follow them, and it continues getting closer and closer. So Barney pulls out his binoculars to take a look at it. He notices that it's a saucer-shaped craft with lights on the front and the sides.
Uh-oh. And
he says that it has two kind of like wings that came out on the sides. If you go online, there's a picture that was drawn. I think it's a picture that Barney drew himself, actually, of like what it looked like. And it looks just like a normal saucer. It's got a row of windows across the entire like front of it all the way around. And it's got the two wings that come out the sides that had lights on them. And he looks through the binoculars, and basically through the row of windows, he says that he sees multiple creatures looking through the window at him. He said that they looked kind of humanoid, but they definitely weren't humans. They were all wearing like black jumpsuits, and he could see that they were looking at him. And he said at this point, it was hovering about 80 feet off the ground, and it was about 300 feet away from them. Yeah. And so they get freaked out, obviously. They're really freaking scared, so they jump back in the car, start to drive away immediately as fast as they could, and they hear like a strange like beeping and buzzing sound that was like, they said it felt like it was like coming off of their car, like a strange beeping buzzing sound. And then they remember that they begin to get really dizzy, and then the next thing they know, they're back on the main road about 30 miles down from where they pulled off, and it was 3 a.m.
It's a lot of time.
So, yeah, there was about 3 hours had gone by. They felt really groggy, and they were like really confused about what happened, but they just kind of continue home. Obviously, they both knew something really strange and freaky happened to them, but they couldn't remember anything. You know, they don't remember anything after seeing the spaceship and then trying to get away. So, they get home, and Barney's noticed that his binocular strap was broken. His shoes were completely like scraped up and destroyed to the point where he had to buy new shoes the next day. Betty's dress was torn in like multiple places, and there was a weird, strange like powder that was on her dress that they didn't know where that came from. Interesting. Both of their watches stopped working and never worked again after that.
Weren't big fans of watches, huh?
They didn't really know what to make of it. And this was back in the 60s. So they basically just didn't, they apparently they tried to call the police, and the police told them to call like the Air Force base or something that was in the area. So the next day, they called the Air Force base, and they told them about what had happened. And there was an official report that was produced about this. It didn't officially come out until 2 years later, but it describes what happened to them as a strange incident. The subject of the report is unidentified flying object. In it, they explain Barney's account of the incident. They also mentioned that the Air Force base did pick up readings on radar that night from an unidentified object in that
So there
area.
was something in the air that people didn't know about that night.
Yeah.
There in that location.
Yep.
Interesting.
There was on the radar, there was an unknown object in the area that night. It also states in the report that Barney's honesty and seriousness appear to be valid. All right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, it would be hard for me to make up an alien story and to get other people to believe it, because I feel like I would just like couldn't keep a straight face through the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tough. You know what I mean? Like
you'd have to be so straight, and they're gonna ask you so many questions, so many different angles. And like I'd mess up somewhere.
Yeah,
no way I could keep it.
Yeah, you gotta really like,
because they're like, I thought you said you went up this way. Oh, did I say that first? Oh, yeah, it was this way.
Yeah, and like it and here's what makes me wanna believe it more is that they went years without really, after they made the incident report with the Air Force, they didn't really do anything else. They talked to like their friends and stuff
Interesting
about
that they
it.
filed it with the Air Force. Like that's the first place.
That's what the police told them to do.
I mean, the police are nice people, not been like, oh, you should talk to the clinic over there. You should talk to.
Have you talked to a psychiatrist? No, but yeah. They told them that's kind of where it was at for a while. But in the coming years, like the next 2 to 3 years, Betty began having like very serious and like extreme intense nightmares. In the nightmares, she was taken onto a craft and experimented on, and just apparently it was very terrifying. Like she would wake up screaming and sweating almost every night, according to like her niece who lived with them for a while. And she, that was not a great thing. She didn't love that. So she would tell people about that. Barney, on the other hand, he tried to kind of like, hold it in. Like he didn't talk to anybody about it. And he was just, you could tell, apparently his niece said like, you could tell like he got really like something was wrong. And he basically, over the next couple years, he developed like PTSD symptoms. Like he was very like quiet and like, which is not what he was like before this. Like he was part of a big civil rights activist, all that stuff. So he developed like PTSD symptoms, and he also developed like high blood pressure, and he basically had to take...
High blood pressure can be from anything though.
True. Yeah. But he basically had to take 6 months off of work because he just couldn't work. Because there was just so much stress and his body was getting fucked up. So Betty kind of like talks to her boss and her sister about these nightmares that she's been having. And they tell her like, maybe like you're remembering something that happened, or maybe like these nightmares are like, recollecting like what happened that you guys have forgotten about or whatever. Mm-hmm. So finally in 1964, 3 years later, they suggest that Betty and Barney should go see a psychiatrist in Boston who specializes in hypnotic regression. All right. And, hypnotic regression is when you're like, get put into like a hypnotic state, and it's supposed to help you like remember things that you've blocked out.
It can also lead to false memories, I heard.
It's possible. I mean, of course. Yeah. You can be
like
more
with Linda's
suggestible.
case, like
you can be more suggestible.
Their hypnosis thing like did more damage than good.
That's because they're bullshitting. but they so they did like hypnotic regression, which and it can, you're right, it can make you more suggestible, like open to suggestions, and it's not a guarantee that you're always like telling the truth exactly what happened, but it's known in a lot of cases to be able to like help you remember things that you've tried to block out or stuff that you just can't remember. So they go see the specialist in Boston, both Barney and Betty, and they have separate sessions. All right. They're not together when they're doing this. They have separate sessions. And during multiple sessions, Betty and Barney are put into hypnosis, and they end up recalling kind of what happened that night. And it's pretty interesting. You can hear some of them, like they have a couple of Barney's sessions are available to listen to on YouTube, and they're very interesting, man. But basically what they recount separately, all right, they both recount the same thing, is them getting back in their car to flee, like we said, and they're stopped in the street by multiple aliens. All right. They're standing like in the road in front of them. So they stop. They describe them as about 5'4", humanoid, no ears, small slits for mouths, small noses, and large cat-like eyes. All right. So they both get out of the car, If it was me, I would have fucking ran him over and kept going, dude. Are you kidding me? I'm not gonna just stop. Be like, oh, I don't want to hurt this alien in front of me. But
Well, I don't think like driving towards them is gonna do anything if they just
good
appear.
point. Yeah, if they're aliens, they could just. Yeah, good point. But I think I'd be too scared to stop. Is what I'm saying. But anyway, so apparently they both get out of the car, and Barney is kind of just like frozen with fear. Like he's not moving. Like he's just kind of, he gets out of the car and he just doesn't know what to do. Betty gets out and runs into the woods to try to escape. But she's chased down by a couple of the aliens and they catch her and they have a little bit of like a fight in the woods where they chase her down, grab her, and they pull her onto the ship. And Barney is basically dragged onto the ship as well. Like they go over there to him. But he doesn't really put up much of a fight. Apparently, he was just kind of frozen with fear. They go over to him, they grab him, drag him onto the ship. Now, once they get on the ship, they're separated, and they're strapped into experiment tables. They said that hair, skin, and tissue samples were taken from both of them. Apparently, they were very interested in like our bone structure and their central nervous system. So like, the brain, spinal cord, that kind of stuff. According to Betty, a large needle was inserted into her navel, which she recalls. Yeah, which she recalls. Ooh. No, navel, your belly button.
That nozzle, my bad.
And she's told that it was some sort of pregnancy test.
They told her, like they said, the aliens said, like this is some kind of pregnancy test.
Yeah.
So the aliens talked to her.
Yes. Now, this is the only discrepancy between them is that Betty says that the aliens were speaking English to her, but it was a weird English. Like it didn't sound like a normal English, but they were speaking to her in English. And Barney says that they communicated like telepathically, but they were separate. So who knows? Maybe one room they were trying to communicate, whatever. But
maybe she didn't have Betty didn't have that telecommunication skill that Barney has.
Who knows? But
maybe they're like, dude, we can't get through to her. All right, does anybody know English? Let's try this English.
Just figure it out. So apparently, a cup-like instrument was placed onto Barney's groin, which they said was to take some sort of like semen sample or something. And later on, in like the months later, there was like a huge, like bunch of warts that showed up in that area around like his groin, like where the cup supposedly was.
Sure, he didn't cheat on his wife.
Not those type of warts. Apparently Betty spoke to one of the aliens and he showed her a star map while she was on there, like after
so they were like kind of chill. They were like talking, like
apparently, apparently, according to Betty, they were kind of being chill with her. She said she tried to take a book that was full of strange writing, but there was an argument between them, and they wouldn't let her take it. They don't want to get found out.
I feel like they're really scared to get found out. Like that's why, like. If alien abduction stories are actually true, like aliens know, like they're not going to get found out if they abduct one of us because people just think we're crazy. So they got that fail safe.
Yeah, and as long as they don't let you take anything or any, you know what I mean. Nowadays, it's going to be harder because of cell phones and like cameras and
that Linda case could never happen today. No, if that ever happened,
there'd be a million videos. Yeah. But yeah, so after that, Betty was returned to the car where she said Barney was sitting inside and she said he was in like a daze. Like he was awake, but he like wasn't responding or anything like that. All this came out during separate hypnosis sessions between them. Like I said, the only discrepancy is how they communicated with them. But since they were in separate rooms, it's possible.
I don't know why that would be blocked from their memories, though. Like, it's not a very traumatic experience. Like, they weren't getting harmed.
I mean, they were abducted, dude. That's pretty fucking scary. Plus, I don't
Why
think
does
that
your memory?
I don't think it was just that like they got scared and didn't like. I think the aliens did something to them so they wouldn't remember. You know, it wasn't just like they blocked it out. I think that like the aliens didn't want them to remember that. But it wasn't even until 1965 when a friend of Betty's that she told about all this and told her about like the hypnosis and all that. Her friend went to the media and told the media about everything, and that's when it kind of started to blow up in 1965. Barney was not too happy about it. Apparently, he did not want anyone to know about this. He still probably thought like this is crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Barney seems like a man's man type of guy. Like he's very like stoic and just not, you know what I mean? Like
doesn't want all this attention.
Doesn't want any sort of attention or emotions, anything like that. Betty seemed like she was very interested in this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's when it started to blow up in 1965. And then they had a bunch of interviews and stuff like that. Their story never changed. Like the story was all the same. In my opinion, the most compelling evidence is the star map that Betty saw on the ship. In 1965, after the story came out, they were like, so can you draw like the star map that you saw? Do you think you can remember what it looked like? And she did. She drew it. And at the time, it had like some lines in it. Like it showed two stars and like some lines going between the planets. She said like some of those lines were like trade routes that they had. And then some of those lines were like exploration routes. But it was a star system. And at the time, it didn't really look like anything. Like people were kind of like, well, you know, I don't know. We can't really find anything that looks like this. Then in 1967, 2 years later, Zeta Reticuli was discovered, and her map was almost an exact replica of the Zeta Reticuli star system. It looks exactly like it. All right. Now, how, you know what I mean? Like, how would she know? Zeta Reticuli wasn't even discovered at the time. And isn't Zeta Reticuli where Bob Lazar says that the crafts and stuff that he worked on possibly came from? Right? Apparently anyone who interviewed them in that time period, like from like 65 to like 70, believed that they were very sincere and genuine. Unfortunately, Barney died of a stroke in 1969, so not too long after. Interesting. Betty didn't die until 2004. She lived a long time. She lived well into her 80s. And I will admit, Betty got a little weird towards the end. You know, she did some interviews when she was in her 80s, and I mean, she at this point you can tell that she obviously kind of like dedicated her life to like aliens and looking at this kind of stuff, which isn't crazy. Like if I got abducted by aliens, I think I might like dedicate a big portion of my life to like looking into that kind of stuff. But apparently like she was like taking pictures of stuff in the sky, and she was like, look at all these UFOs I've seen. And they were like easily just like, this is a weather balloon, or this is, you know, that type of stuff. But she's an old lady. What do you know what I mean? Like she was in her 80s at this point. So some people try and discredit her because of that, but it's like, I don't think that really discredits her. Like it's more about what they were doing before this happened, like what kind of people they were before. You know what I mean? And like I said, they were both very upstanding citizens. They'd received awards for civil rights, for all kinds of stuff they'd done.
But it's a very interesting story. It's compelling. It's one of those stories where like these two people have like normal backgrounds.
Right? They're not UFO kooks, or they're not like UFO researchers or anything before that. They were like upstanding citizens. Like I said, like they were big. Barney was a huge civil rights activist. He received awards from the governor of New Hampshire. Plus he was invited to Lyndon B. Johnson's inauguration. Like they were upstanding citizens. What would be their reason for, you know what I mean? They didn't like make a bunch of money off this. They didn't. I think like way later a book was written, but not while Barney was alive, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. I think,
And they didn't say anything about this. Like, it was one of Betty's friends that like leaked everything and started talking to the media about it, you know? Plus all the weird shit, like her dress was all torn up, their watches never working again.
maybe they had like a strange encounter that they didn't know what it was, and then when they did hypnosis, they triggered some false kind of memory that made them think.
But they both separately told like the same story during regression.
They both
You're
had
not
the
like
same,
very conscious when you're under hypnotic regression. You know what I mean?
right? But you don't know what the person's asking.
You're a fucking skeptic, bro. Fuck you.
You don't know what the person's
fuck outta
asking.
here.
You don't know what the person's
You
asking.
do. You can listen to it.
I know, but like the person that's asking these questions might be the one triggering.
That's when some people say that he was leading, but I didn't think so when I listened to it. And you could feel the emotion. Like, you could hear the emotion. Like, at one point, Barney starts crying, like hysterically crying and yelling during it. You know what I mean? Like, there's real emotion there. Something happened to them. Like, it's, you know what I mean?
Well,
these guys are civil rights activists. Why would he want to sound like a fucking weirdo and say like, I got abducted by aliens and stuff? He's trying to like, you know what I mean?
you never know people's intentions.
I guess. I mean, I didn't know them personally, but yeah. It's just really interesting. This one, in my opinion, is the most believable. I believe it the most. And it also was the very first, it was the first public UFO abduction. Not UFO thing, but like abduction, So it's really interesting to me. I believe him. I believe that one. On a scale, all right, so we have to go from most believable to least believable. What do you go with?
Most believable, I would definitely put the missing plane one. I think is the most believable one to me.
Okay.
Second, I'll put Betty and Barney. I just have issues with the hypnosis.
Okay.
And then third would be Travis Walton.
Yeah.
Because you have to put into perspective that like 6 other people are collaborating his story. So
And lie detector tests were passed.
yeah. So like there's some evidence there that like wouldn't rule me out. I don't believe Linda's story. The only intriguing thing is the 23 other witnesses that have nothing to do with
Linda's
her.
bullshit, dude.
But I don't believe that story. It's just a famous story. I don't believe it.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. No, I would flip Betty Barney Hill and the plane incident. Like, I would go least believable is Linda. Fucking, she's lying. Second, we Travis Walton. Just because there's a lot of interesting facts about it afterwards. Third would be the plane, the pilot, and then most believable in my opinion is Betty Barney Hill. Just because of all the evidence, man. Like the star map, dude. How are you just gonna draw a star map that resembles Zeta Reticuli like that? It's not.
Maybe you should just saw the state of Reticuli star system and just drew that from what she saw from the sky.
Can you see Zeta Reticuli from the sky?
I'm no astrologist.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's also just interesting how Zeta Reticuli isn't like, that's not the only time Zeta Reticuli is mentioned when you're talking about like aliens and UFOs and stuff. I think Zeta Reticuli comes up a lot, which we should do an episode. We're gonna do an episode on Zeta Reticuli.
Everything about it,
because there's a lot. It shows up a lot.
Yes.
In alien,
also an ancient. There's an ancient.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we'll get into that.
So we'll get into that. But
I do want to close on some alien abduction things. So there seems to be a pattern, basically with abduct like people who say they've been abducted. That their pattern is that they feel numb. They don't know what's going on. They feel helpless, and they feel like they're moving toward a light. And then they come back and they don't remember. They know that large amounts of times have passed, but they don't remember that time. It's been blocked out.
Missing time is very fluid throughout all abduction stories. Yeah. There's a lot of abduction stories out there, and I really feel like 85 to 90% of them are bullshit.
Most of them, maybe even 100%. But like
no, we can't do that. We can't do that.
There's a poll out there that says that maybe 500,000 Americans have been abducted. And like, dude, that's no way.
No way. That's a stupid. That's like a dumb, stupid, like BuzzFeed clickbait poll. Shut up. But yeah, we got to wrap this one up. We've been going for a minute here now. I think that's all we got for today on abductions. I mean, we went pretty deep on abductions here. These, like I said, these are the most famous. There's all kinds of ones you can go look up,
and we might do like some others in the later podcast.
Yeah, we might eventually do more different abduction stories. Although I've looked at a lot of them, and most of them are just bullshit to me. Dude.
Yeah.
These ones, even half of these ones, I think are bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. The best ones that we found.
Exactly. So I don't know if we'll do another episode on them, but
depends. It depends how many mysteries we got.
Maybe years from now, when we're running out of episode ideas, we'll go back to other abduction stories. But yeah, so they're just super interesting to me, man. I really like. Obviously, anything alien is super interesting. I love that kind of stuff. So it's fun to look into it, and I would suggest you guys look a little more into them too. I mean, I would look into the Betty Barney Hill one, look into the Travis Walton. There's a lot of stuff you can look into on it. And just make a decision for yourself whether you think it's
they all have books you can, except the pilot, but they all have books you can read too if you're interested.
Definitely movies, books. The movies aren't always.
There's no movies on the other ones. There's just movies on.
There's a movie on the Betty and Barney Hill.
Oh, really? Is there?
Sort of. It's like an NBC like movie thing that came out It came out in like the 70s after Barney had died, because I don't think he would want that.
Did you, when you watch the movie The Fire in the Sky, they probably spend more time on the alien ship than Travis describes?
Not really. Fire in the Sky is not that great, guys. I'm sorry. It's just not that good of a movie. But yeah, so check that stuff out if you're interested.
That's why he wants a remake. That's all.
A remake might be cool if they did it right, which I'd be interested. I'd go see it, but I'm sure it would just be on Netflix or something. But yeah, so check that stuff out. I guess finally it's coming down to it. Next episode, we're gonna do Skinwalker Ranch. We've been avoiding it.
Yeah, avoiding it.
I don't know why we've been avoiding it, just because we tried it one time, and it's a very jumbled thing. Like, there's so much.
It happens at that range.
Yeah, there's so much into it. Like, it goes across all spectrums of, like, supernatural and, like, folklore, like, all kinds of, like, interdimensional, like, psychic, like, all kinds of stuff going on at Skinwalker Ranch. So it's hard to kind of categorize, but we'll figure it out. We'll get into it. So stay tuned for that. That should be coming soon. Again, thank you guys for listening, and peace out.
Peace out. Sleep tight. Don't get abducted.
Mystery Brothers.
Mystery Brothers.
Mystery Brothers. Mystery Brothers.
Mystery Brothers. Mystery Brothers. Mystery